lovers, it is G-Swizz here, and I'm here today with my first part of my top 18 books of 2018. You guys might be thinking,
G-Swizz, did you really have to share 18 books to kind of match the number of the year?
I would have to say yes and no to that. The reason why I'm saying yes is because, hey, it fits very well. But the reason I would say no to that is because I've read around over 170 books so far this year as I'm filming this. How would you expect me to narrow all of them down to 10? I don't know. And so I've decided I'm gonna stick to 18. But for the sake of this video not being too long and for me not taking up too much memory on my camera or my computer, I've just decided I'm gonna split this video into two. There's more content for you guys. You're welcome. So technically in this video, I will be sharing books 18 to 10, and then the next video I'll be sharing 9 to 1, so that it will be like a full-on definitive countdown of what I really enjoyed this year. And I definitely do need to do a positive video on my channel. Just before this, I was editing my most disappointing reads, and that came out more savage than I expected it to. I was concerned by it, so I apologize to those who were deeply affected by that. I don't think we have that much time, so I guess I better get started into my top 18 books of 2018, and we will be starting with the first half here. Coming in at spot number 18, we have the first of the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey. Just remember, me putting these books low on the list does not mean that I didn't enjoy them whatsoever. Just remember, I read over 170 books this year. Just putting it on this list is a big compliment. The Expanse series is a great series, and I cannot wait to get into the TV show, but oh boy, James S.A. Corey, them two, under this pen name, they can write, and they write very well. They write so entertainingly. I feel like I'm experiencing this cinematically when I'm reading it, and I think that that is definitely amazing. That is talent, that is a gift that both these authors carry, and they do it so well with each other. Nothing feels inconsistent in this series. The reason why it is lower than some of the books on this list is because I read this book like more towards the beginning of the year. I forgot a lot of things about this book before going into this book, so that kind of like somewhat destroyed a little bit of a great reading experience for me. But regardless, I still enjoyed this series, and I kind of wish I read the books back to back. That's why I need to read book 3 like as soon as the new year starts. But overall, I thoroughly enjoy what I've read of this series so far. I cannot praise this series enough. I am so excited to continue on. It just reminds me why I love sci-fi so much. This is instantly one of my favorite sci-fi series of all time, and I'm only 2 books into a 9-book series, for crying out loud. Coming in at spot number 17, we have To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. This was a stunning debut that I did not expect that much from at all, and I got a lot out of it. This book was just amazing. I loved it for its writing style. I'm not even like the craziest Little Mermaid fan at all. There are so many other people that are obsessed with The Little Mermaid, or just obsessed with mermaids and sirens. That's their thing. And so going into this, like, I didn't expect too much, only because like this isn't necessarily my thing. Even though fairy tale retellings play a big part in young adult literature, I'm still not crazy about them. Like, I love the Lunar Chronicles, and that's pretty much it. But this is kind of like up there with the Lunar Chronicles in my mind. Oh, it was just so good. I also especially loved the crew in here. I laughed, I cried, I gasped, I felt so many things, and I am so devastated that this isn't a series because the potential, man. It was so easy to get attached to these characters and to also hate the antagonistic figures in here. It just had this amazing, compelling quality to it. Didn't really last that long. Very devastated about it because Alexandra Christo has the potential to write an amazing series that I could totally get on board with. That's why it ended up on my top books of 2018. Definitely one of my biggest surprises of the year. And speaking of books that surprised me this year, I'm pretty sure everybody guessed Haruki Murakami and Norwegian Wood was going to make an appearance on this list at some point in time. I was very deeply surprised by how engrossed I was. This is technically not a story that I would be so gravitated towards at all. It literally feels very contemporary-esque. I was not recommended this book from BookTube whatsoever. I barely see anybody talk about Haruki Murakami here in the BookTube community. This book was recommended to me by a work colleague. They really fell in love with it, but they gave me the disclaimer. They're like, oh, I love this book, but I think you're gonna find it to be very weird, so I don't know if you're gonna like it yourself. So just go into it with that expectation. Go into it with the expectation that it's gonna be weird and you probably might not like it, but this is my favorite book. so here you go. I read it and I fell in love with Haruki Murakami's writing style. That played a big part in why I absolutely loved this book. I wanted to take my time reading this book. I just savored every single moment of it. Definitely have to give a disclaimer when it comes to Haruki Murakami's books. A lot of his older works are very flawed, especially when he writes his female characters. He does not do a very good job with female representation whatsoever. Also, his books are definitely MA/R rated. They talk about sex a lot. This is definitely not for younger readers. I'm personally not going to give an age range because it depends on your personal maturity level and what you can handle. It kind of feels weird that I'm so obsessed with Haruki Murakami's writing. I don't know, his writing has just become very addictive to me. It's made me realize that even though there are times I do more look for books that are very plot driven and very character driven, there are some times where I just read the books for the writing. That was the case for Norwegian Wood. I enjoyed the reading experience because I took my time with it just to savor his writing style. That comes to show I have different ways of enjoying my books at different times. I'm a mood reader, so there's that. That's the reason why Norwegian Wood was something special for me. Coming in at spot number 15, we have Wing Jones by Katherine Weber. I'm pretty sure that this is the only contemporary that is going to be on my top list. That being said, this is one of my favorite contemporaries written in existence. It is so heartbreaking and it has to do with grief and loss. The protagonist runs in order to let off their steam, in order to let out their grief. Like, I personally can't relate in that way. What I absolutely appreciate about Wing Jones as a book is that it takes something that is very dark and turns it into something bright. The book does not begin in the best way possible. It is actually very devastating. I personally do not want to spoil this book for any of you guys, but let's just say this book begins with some sort of a tragedy. And in order for our protagonist, Wing Jones, to cope with that, she runs. And she doesn't even just have to cope with the tragedy, she gets bullied at school as well. And how does she deal with it? She deals with running. And honestly, just seeing her journey going from one of the lowest points in her life to succeeding and to fulfilling her dreams and her passions is just honestly so inspiring to me. And it just reminded me that I had to keep going this year in my physical health journey as well. I was definitely very inspired by this book. This book made me cry, but it also made me so happy. I absolutely appreciate the biracial representation in here. This book has one of the best biracial families who have been represented in YA literature. That's why it ended up on a top spot in my favorite reads of 2018. It was just that good to me personally. It's one of my favorite contemporaries ever now, and I definitely recommend it to everyone. Coming in at spot number 14, we have a book by two Australian superstars, and that, my friends, is Obsidio by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I loved this finale. There were a lot of bittersweet feelings about the finale. A lot of people do think that this book is their favorite, and there are some people that think it's their second favorite or their least favorite. I mean, like, you've got three to choose from pretty much. My personal favorite is Gemina still, and it's a lot of people's least favorite book in the trilogy, but Hannah and Nick for days, man. And Ella. Team Ella. All the way, man. Obsidio was definitely a very close second favorite. I absolutely loved this. I love the mixed media format even more in this book, and just the illustrations were gorgeous as well. These books do not cease to amaze me. I really do love this trilogy. It definitely ended off on a really good note. I know a lot of people had very bittersweet feelings about it. This was definitely a very bittersweet conclusion. However, I did really enjoy it, and I 100% think that this book deserved a spot on this list. I am very proud of Amy and Jay and what they have accomplished with the series, and I am so looking forward to Aurora Rising. Like, you guys have no idea. My friends have arcs now, and I'm completely jealous. And coming in at spot number 13, we have Fahreinheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. It will be a surprise to a lot of people because this is a classic that a lot of people were forced to read in school and they didn't like it. It left a very bad taste in their mouth. Like, they hate it. A lot of my close friends absolutely despise this book. And so I went into this book with very low expectations, but I want to read more classic dystopia because I absolutely love 1984 by George Orwell. I still do, and that's definitely a book that I want to reread at some point in time. Sometimes I just need to remind myself why I love dystopia and if I love dystopia, so like I read a dystopia every once in a while. I decided to give this book a chance, especially because there was a HBO adaptation, which wasn't really that great. I watched it on the plane ride home from VidCon, although Michael B. Jordan, man, he a snack. And I was amazed. I loved this book. No, it's not as great as 1984. Definitely not as great as a lot of other dystopians out there, but oh boy, to know that this book, I'm pretty sure it was written before 1984. It was written before a lot of popular dystopians were out. It was written before a lot of technology was out, and to know that it was written that long ago to be so relevant to now, it scares me. I don't know, Ray Bradbury, he would have been like super, like hella prophetic, man. That's the best way I can possibly describe this book. Like, it's so scary close to now, it freaks me out inside. 1984 gave me those terrifying feels, but after reading this book, I'm even more terrified. I know it's very weird to say, but that is kind of the purpose of dystopian fiction. Dystopian fiction is meant to make you look at the world today and realize we can do better. Like, we read these books and we're like, oh wow, that is ugly, and we never want to go there. But then we also need to apply that today and realize, how can we not get here and make this world a better place so that we never end up being like this? That's why I love dystopian fiction. Sometimes it can be prophetic, but then at the same time, it makes you look at that world and this world. It makes you look at the parallels, and then it also makes you think very deeply. It makes you think, how can I make a difference? And how can we as a society make a difference? And so that is why a bunch of classic dystopia out there stands the test of time, like this one. This one is still relevant to today's society. In fact, it's even more relevant than it was back in the day. And that is scary. That's kind of why it's one of my favorites of the year. I know a lot of you guys might be thinking I'm definitely crazy. I was mostly curious to actually read this, not just because of the movie, but because PewDiePie read it this year and he hated it. And so I was like, okay, PewDiePie read it, I'm gonna try it out. I'm probably gonna hate it as well, but no, I ended up liking it. Sorry, PewDiePie. Still subscribe to PewDiePie though. We gotta beat T-Series. Coming in at spot number 12, we have The Runaways, Volume 1, Find Your Way Home, and this is Rainbow Rowell's new take on Runaways. And I personally think I wouldn't have actually liked this one that much if I hadn't watched the Runaways TV show beforehand. This is kind of like a really cool continuation from the original Runaways series. This isn't a reboot, so if you haven't actually been previously introduced to the Runaways whatsoever, I think you'd be pretty lost reading this series, and I don't think you'd enjoy it as much. That being said, I absolutely love this volume, and I'm not gonna lie, this year in Marvel Comics, for me personally, hasn't been the best reading year. Every other Marvel comic that I have read this year has been okay, but it hasn't actually surpassed this one, nor it has surpassed the rest of the books on my favorites list of 2018. I was very close to putting the Black Panther series and the Spider-Gwen series on this list, but a lot of other comic books this year haven't been wowing me. But then at the same time, first half of the year I read more comic books, and the second half of the year I didn't, because they weren't wowing me. So I definitely want to give more comic books a try in 2019, because like I need to get through a bunch of my Marvel comics, as you can see. Oh my goodness, I just realized that as I'm filming this, the Runaways TV series season 2 premiered yesterday. I need to finish this video so I can start watching that, and probably fall into a slump thanks to that TV series. I loved this so much. I know that a lot of people think that it was just okay. I think the biggest reason why I absolutely love this is because of Rainbow Rowell's writing style and her sense of humor and how she's incorporated it with the Runaways. Rainbow Rowell and the Runaways, it's a match made in heaven. Simplest way to put it. That's a big reason why I appreciate this series. It's mostly because of Rainbow Rowell's writing and how she wrote these characters, and I'm so excited to see what's next in store. Okay, coming in at spot number 11, which will be the second last book I will be sharing in this video today, will be Restore Me by Tahereh Mafi. I am so happy that this made it onto my top favorites list. At first I was really excited to read this book, and then I think as the book started coming closer, I kept on forgetting that this book was coming closer, and I became less excited about the series. Maybe it's just because that there were so many hyped releases during the time, but then I picked this book up, I read it, and it was just such a quick read. I missed this world, I missed these characters, and I'm so happy that this world has been expanded upon. Even though this book is very bittersweet for the fandom, it's definitely very bittersweet for the fandom, my goodness. The world building has been expanded upon. I personally am living for it because, like I said earlier on in this video, I'm obsessed with dystopian fiction. That is a big reason why I do like the Shatter Me series, even though the Shatter Me series isn't really the best dystopian out there. I really love how there's a bit of a mystery element to it, because there's so much more to have been uncovered, and that's why I'm really excited to continue on with this series. A lot of people after this book don't want to accept this book as canon. That's totally understandable. Personally, I will accept it as canon because I loved it. Not only that, I want to accept it as canon because I want to accept more world building as canon. This book delivered it to me, and so that is why it's on my favorites list of this year. And the very final book I'll be mentioning today that makes it to number 10 on my top 18 books of 2018 is gonna have to be The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Okay, so this book wasn't actually actually originally on my top 18 books of 2018 because this was one of the first books I read this year. And I remember my excitement for this book as soon as I received it in the mail, because this book came out on the 2nd of January this year. I received it like on the 3rd of January, I'm pretty sure. And it was sent to me in exchange for an honest review. So I actually expected this book to come to me a month or two before its release, but there was like a publishing error. The majority of the people that were on the mailing list for this book didn't receive it until its release, and I was one of those people. And so as soon as the 3rd of January hit and it had reached my doorstep, I immediately started reading this book, and I read it in 1 or 2 sittings, I'm pretty sure. I liked it at the time, I really did, but I forgot about it throughout the year because it was the first book I read this year. I just reread it. I just finished my reread of it because I got the audiobook and I was like, hey, you know, this is gonna be a quick audiobook. I may as well just reread it, you know, before The Wicked King comes out. I'm so happy I reread it because I had fallen in love with the story again. I am obsessed. I love the story. I love these characters and I love how flawed they are. And I seriously love this world, how dark it is, and I love our protagonist because our protagonist is unlikable and because our protagonist will do anything in her power to make sure that she gets what she wants. Sometimes I hate that in protagonists, but Holly Black wrote her very well. And not only that, Holly Black just has an amazing writing style, but at the same time, just an amazing sense of humor. I'm very surprised that I haven't read more Holly Black books because there's so many other Holly Black books that I need to get to, like The Coldest Girl in Cold Town, like The Darkest Part of the Forest, like the Tive trilogy. There's so many books that I need to get to by Holly Black. As soon as I finished it, I knew I needed The Wicked King, and I'm so bitter and so devastated that everybody else has an arc of The Wicked King and I don't. Like, what the heck, man? I'm excited because The Wicked King is coming out very soon. My chill level is 0. It wasn't until this morning that this book made it on my top 18 books of 2018. I had to bump a few titles off my list today in order to fit a few new titles on, and this was one of the new titles. That says a lot. Okay, so I guess that's gonna be it for the first half of my top 18 books of 2018 today, book lovers. Don't forget to stay tuned for the second part, and if you want to purchase any of the books that I mentioned on this list today, all the Book Depository purchase links will be down in the description so you can check them out, you can purchase them, and you can help me out by doing so. And I also have social medias. I'm at G-Swizzel Books on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also at Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.